Iguacu update. From the world of Iguacu this week, we are travelling from Vanuatu to Brussels to South Sudan, Central African Republic, Haiti, Myanmar, Syria, and we've just received an update on Afghanistan. So all in the next 10 minutes, please don't hesitate to post your questions. Our lead researchers will join us shortly. Ask us anything about Iguacu, how we work, why we're called Iguacu, how we do what we do. Feel free to ask any questions about the charities we recommend and why we recommend them. You know, the point of Iguacu is to address the frustration people feel when they try to give overseas. And they go online and they just see this wall of different charities and they have no way of knowing how to distinguish one from another. And we focus on where the needs are critical around the world, the most serious crises. And often these places change from day to day and they're very complex and violent. And it's just very difficult for a member of the public who may be trying to fit in little research in between all their other obligations in life to try to be able to get on top of these crises and understand enough to know which charities are well placed to be effective on the ground. So that's what Iguacu is all about. We're a non-profit, independent investigator serving the global public, making it easy to give effectively. And if you want to give effectively to overseas serious crises now in the world, there is no other place as simpler and as effective as donating through Iguacu. So feel free to challenge me on that one, and I'd love to answer your questions as to why we feel very strongly about that. Our network of more than 900 experts around the world in 31 countries all back what Iguacu is all about, because by making it effortless for the public to give effectively, we can help channel greater effective support to where in the world it's in great need. And it feels great to be able to help people in great need. So do join us at weareiguacu.org and see what I'm talking about. But today, let's carry on with our latest update from the research team. And the first to join us is Adib Chowdhury. Let me see if I can bring him into the conversation here. And he'll be talking to us about Vanuatu in the South Pacific, I believe. And he'll tell you more. Hello, Adib. How are you today?
Hi, Catherine. I'm doing well. How are you?
I can't quite hear you yet. Could you repeat that? Maybe at the audience heard you, but I didn't hear any audio.
No problem. Can you hear me okay?
I still can't hear any audio. Let me just that might just be me. I'll just, headset material. How about that? Can you say something for me now?
No problem. Can you hear me
yeah,
okay?
I can hear you perfectly. Like our listeners probably can too, but it just helps for me to be able to hear you. Adib is our lead researcher on disaster response around the world and also looks at disaster resilience. And you've been following Vanuatu in the South Pacific. I'll let you bring people up to date.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. So in the South Pacific, in Vanuatu, the Vanuatu government, it's ordered the evacuation of some 11,000 people from the island of Ambae. And this comes following the volcano Monaro and its unpredictable activity, which has been ongoing since last September. It's been spewing torrents of ash, rocks, and gas across the island since last September. And recently, a landslide compounded by flash flooding on the island has hampered evacuation efforts. And right now, it's believed that as many as 800 people are believed to be staying in emergency relief shelters on the island, unable to move. And the debris has caused a lot of health effects amongst the locals on the island, and it's threatened their livelihoods by burying their vegetable plots, crops, and it's caused dwindling supplies of food, as a lot of the food has to be shipped in by air, and a lot of the flights have been cancelled due to the volcano. And so right now the priority, according to UNICEF, inside of these emergency shelters lies with creating a safe space for women and children inside of these shelters. And it's believed that about 800 people are staying in them right now. And the government, in the meantime, has chartered airplanes to help NGOs travel from the nearby islands onto Vanuatu itself, just to help with the relief efforts.
Great. Look, thanks for that update, Adib. And I gather the rest of the world is peaceful with regards to natural disasters. Is that your take?
Yes, for now.
Very
Yes.
good. Well, we like to hear that. Thanks very much for that update. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye,
Bye,
Catherine.
Dave. Thank you. So next we have news on Syria. Now, it's from our lead researcher on the Middle East, Nathaniel Shiraki, but he's currently at 35,000 feet. So I'm going to share his report for you, which he brought up to date just before boarding the plane. So let me just read this to you briefly. Last week, 36 donors gathered at the second Brussels funding conference and pledged $4.4 billion to support life-saving humanitarian aid and resilience support to millions of affected people in Syria and the surrounding region near Syria's borders. Among the largest donors were the UK and Germany. Now, it's not enough to cover the needs of the more than 13 million people in need of humanitarian help in Syria, but UN officials welcomed this commitment as an important first step. Meanwhile, our recommended charity is doing amazing work in Syria and its borders. You know, it's a wonderful charity, and right now you can effectively help the Syrian people supporting SAMS through weareiguacu.org, and it only takes seconds to make a donation. So right now, the latest news from SAMS is that, part of their support for the Syrian people is ongoing professional training for medical workers inside Syria, for which they organise regular training sessions. Now, this is crucial on two fronts. It provides Syria with the doctors and medical expertise urgently needed to face the country's massive health crisis. It also trains a new generation of young Syrian doctors, giving them the tools to help the recovery of a future post-war Syria. So last week, near the border in Turkey, they welcomed Dr. Mohammed Al-Hosni, a paediatrician and neonatal care specialist from the US, to lead training on neonatal care for preterm infants. The program gathered 14 doctors, nurses and midwives who work inside Syria. Dr. Al-Hosni used a combination of theoretical and practical sessions to develop their expertise on infant care. To date, SAM's medical training in Turkey has trained nearly 850 medical staff working inside Syria. Thanks for that update, Nathaniel. Next to join us is Blondine Sidinier, and Blondine is our lead researcher for Central Africa. And Blondine has an update for you on South Sudan and should be joining us any minute now. And there we are. Wonderful. Hello. How are you?
Hi, Catherine.
Very, very good to hear you loud and clear. That's wonderful. Now you have an update for us on South Sudan.
Yes, clashes over the country intensified over the past week, forcing over 40 humanitarian workers to relocate from unsafe areas and suspend the delivery of much needed help. This intensification comes after the third round of peace talks, first scheduled to take place last week, was postponed due to security and political disagreements. On a brighter note, 10 aid workers abducted in the south of the country while on a needs assessment mission were safely released after 5 days in captivity.
Wow, that's wonderful news. And
Yes.
And have an update this week from the Central African Republic.
$11 million were allocated by the Multilateral Humanitarian Fund for the Central African Republic to address urgent needs across the country as continued violence and instability are forcing more and more people to flee. A recommended charity in the Central African Republic, Triangle, has launched an emergency program in the east to respond to the needs of 6,000 newly displaced people. This program includes building boreholes to ensure communities have access to safe drinking water, building latrines, as well as raising awareness on good hygiene practices to fight against the spread of disease. And one latest news is that clashes have been reported today in Bangui with several people killed, including a priest, and we will let you know on these developments once we know more.
I guess it's too early to tell if this is related to the latest change. There was the effect you talked about in a recent update that's very important economically, and the UN was policing it, and it caused a lot of tension. Is it related to that development, or is it?
Yes, it appears to be. It appears to be related because a few weeks ago, the UN, along with the national army, carried out a disarmament operation in one neighborhood of Bangui, but they carried that operation because civilians asked them to do something, and it went wrong. Several people were killed, and in retaliation, armed groups gathered in the north of the country to discuss what they would do, including march on the capital to overthrow the government. And these latest developments appear to be related because it's a militia coming from that neighborhood which appear to have attacked another neighborhood.
But do you think, I mean, it's a bit hard to say and probably an unfair question, but do you think that the reaction from the militia is more about resentment about being disarmed, or is it in reaction to the people who are actually killed in the disarmament process? Do we have any idea?
Frankly, probably both, because militias are profiting from their activities, so they certainly do not want to lay down their weapons. Programs to encourage militias to lay down their weapons have been ongoing before, and militias tend to say that they participate and they send some fighters, but mostly they don't participate because for them they make money out of being a militia. They tax the population, and also it can be retaliation for the loss they suffered as well.
Okay, I understand. Thank you, Blondine. That great update.
Thank you, Catherine.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Next to join us is our lead researcher for Myanmar and Haiti, Kirsty Aventurine. And I'll just bring Kirsty into the conversation, and she should join us shortly. And I believe she's going to share with us some news about the Rohingya crisis in Myanmar. Hi, Kirsty. How are you?
Catherine, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, thank you. You have some news, I believe, on Myanmar this week.
Yes. So yesterday, 15 UN diplomats arrived in Myanmar to meet leader Aung San Suu Kyi and discuss the Rohingya crisis, including possible ways to ensure the safe and dignified return of Rohingya refugees who fled to Bangladesh to Myanmar since last August. So the mission has been scheduled to visit several locations within the troubled Rakhine region. They have not been allowed to land, but this could mark a first step towards the possible resolution of the Rohingya crisis. Myanmar is also one of the most ethnically diverse countries in the world, and is characterized by decades-long civil wars between government forces and ethnic minority militias who demand forces, and the Kachin Independence Army displacing more than 5,000 people out between the Kachin minority and the government forces. More than 100,000 people have been forced to flee their homes, and the Myanmar military has been accused of several human rights violations, such as rape, torture, and arbitrary killings.
Do you think that, a lot of people hear a lot about the Rohingya crisis and they don't know anything or much about the other minorities in the country? Can you share a little bit more about what you can say about the different minorities, just to help people who aren't aware?
Yes, sure. So in Myanmar, there are over 135 minorities, and they are demanding to be recognized and more autonomy because the Myanmar is very fragmented as a country, and it is true, as you said, the other minorities who are also being persecuted by the Myanmar government.
They similarly have this second-class citizen status, don't they? They're not even citizens, or they don't have the same rights. Is that right?
Yes. So, for example, the Rohingya, as it is for now, they are not recognized. They're stateless, and they are not recognized. The term Rohingya, for example, is not even allowed within Myanmar, so they're not recognized in any way. And other groups are just fighting for more recognition and to be able to have more autonomy within the areas where they're located.
Great. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. Very good, Kirsty. And I believe you have an update re cholera in Haiti. What's happening there?
Yes. So 8 years since the cholera epidemic started in Haiti, we can definitely say that the number of cholera cases have been on the downtrend. In fact, close to 300 cases were reported since the beginning of the year, and that is less than 80% compared to last year. Now, with the rainy season, which is projected to last until June, greater vigilance will be necessary to prevent the resurgence of the waterborne cholera disease. Our recommended charity, Partners in Health, is precisely operating in 2 of the 3 most affected regions and has already started to take some necessary steps. And these include, for example, administrating cholera vaccinations to more than 80,000 people in a commune of Mirabele, which is almost the entire population. PIH, Partners in Health, is also running 10 dedicated cholera treatment centers and is also helping to support the rehabilitation of water and sanitation infrastructures in its clinics, hospitals, and schools. You can find out more about why they were recommended in Haiti and their work on www.weareiguacu.org.
Lovely. Thank you, Kirsty. That's great. Appreciate that. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsty.
See you next week.
Great. I also have, before we go today, a last-minute update on Afghanistan. And let me share this with you. It's from our lead researcher, Rahila, and it is about the peace offer that was given to the Taliban, and and what's happened to that, and the horrendous last week, what's been happening in Afghanistan. So this report's from Rahila. President Ashraf Ghani made a peace offer to the Taliban in February, and he promised to recognise the Taliban as a legitimate political group, or offered this on behalf of the Afghan government if they stopped violence and conflict in return. Well, the Taliban was silent, and they have broken their silence on the offer and announcing their annual spring offensive and dismissing the peace talks. The announcement comes as a new wave of Taliban attacks across Afghanistan has already started, and this is the time of year as it starts to warm up where that's more likely to happen. And there's been massive attacks on Afghan security forces in different parts of the country. Just a week after 60 people were killed at a voter registration queue in the west of Kabul, 2 explosions in Kabul killed at least another 26 people on Monday. That's Monday this week, including 10 journalists who had arrived to report on the first explosion. People queuing to vote and journalists. This has become, on Monday this week, the deadliest day for Afghanistan's media workers, and it's one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a journalist. Hours after the attack in Kabul, a suicide bomber in a vehicle attacked a foreign military convoy in the southern province of Kandahar, killing 11 children studying in a nearby religious school. I'm sorry, they shouldn't let me read this stuff. Now, to the strength of the Afghan people. Despite the security threats, the registration process for parliamentary elections remains underway. So, well, thank you so much for joining us. That's it today for our live update, and there's a whole lot more at weareiguacu.org. And we really strongly encourage you to share your questions with us. You can reach out to us through the platform, also through our social media. We love your questions about how we work. How do we find out truly effective charities in places like South Sudan, a place with no roads and great insecurity? And how do we do it? And how do we build our network around the world in 31 countries? And why do more than 900 people talk to us for no fee to help inform our service? And just anything at all about Iguacu, we'd love to hear from you, and we very much welcome your questions anytime. Otherwise, thanks very much for joining us, and have a great week. Bye for now.